Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining RelineLIVE today. We are kind of trying a new day and seeing how Wednesday works, mostly because Cullom has a big project he's flying to in about an hour. So we are going to keep this to exactly 30 minutes so he can catch his plane. Thank you, Cullom, for joining us so much again. I'm so excited to have you back after we had so many questions last time.
Thank you, Cassie. It's good to be back. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We're going to have Cullom walk us through this pipe rehab kind of toolkit matrix where you guys can evaluate priorities and products. If you have questions, so I'm going to do a little housekeeping real quick. Use the questions button on your control panel. In there, you can type questions. I'll be monitoring those. We're going to go through all the different tabs of the matrix and the spreadsheet first, explain everything, and then I'm going to get to your guys' questions. So if don't get antsy, the first 10 minutes, we're just going to take some time to explain what we're trying to do here. And by we, I mean this is something Cullom developed, and I just think it's cool. So I'm going to pull up my screen.
Well, we put it when we were designing our new website. We decided to have something that we could give away for free as a tool. So at the bottom of the home page, infrasteel.com, you can request this spreadsheet, which you can plug in that's in the market. So it's not, it's totally unbiased. I think that as we kind of get into it's a decision-making tool. It's a design matrix that was developed by a guy who was a design guy to help him evaluate designs. And you can, there's different YouTube videos online of people using these types of things, and there's a good bit of information available on design matrix.
And I apologize, Cullom, it's not pulling up on my screen, so I just closed and restarted. I think it's just that I have so many applications opening, my computer is not cooperating. So I closed Excel, I forced quit, and I am reloading it right now.
Okay.
So I don't know what the delay is, though. It just keeps bouncing at me here. Let's try this one more time.
So if you viewers want the tool, infrasteel.com, name and email address, you'll automatically get and work on, change it, adjust, delete and add products as you see fit.
Okay, we are in business and I'm sharing my screen. Everyone should be able to see the tool now. So we are going to start on the first tab, which is defining priorities and options. Cullom, can you see that on your screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
And I'm also going to be looking at a copy that I printed out. So, this is step one. Each step has some instructions along with it. So the only set thing on this spreadsheet, the set values is this criteria, because we felt like these criteria, these 10 different criteria were pretty would be important for any culvert rehab analysis. And these values that we started with in this original data set was actually used by hydrostructures out of North Carolina when they were designing one for the town of Chapel Hill. And obviously in that case they chose us. We wouldn't probably put this on the website if we weren't the chosen product, but you change it as you see fit, and you can add and delete going forward. Of course, I've already said that. But so here we're going to rank. There's 10 criteria: flow capacity, design life, increased structural integrity, adaptability, total estimated cost, community traffic disruption, estimated construction time, permitting difficulty, and contractor availability. So in order for the spreadsheet to work going forward, we're going to rank from 1 to 10 what's most important to us here, with 1 being what's least important and 10 being what's most important. Then as we go forward into our worksheet, this adds a weighted value as we go forward. So if flow capacity is most important to you, and that gets a 10 now, that's going to factor into things later down the road as we move forward here, as opposed to contractor availability, which in this case has a 1. But you can change them. Cassie, why don't you just change one for the heck of it to show if you want to make flow capacity or one of them. So yeah. So the user would then just, rank them accordingly. And so, there's a description there to the right about each of these. Flow capacity, I think we all pretty much understand. Design life, structural integrity, adaptability. The description for that is the alternatives ability to be expanded upon or altered in the future. In this particular analysis, the case study that this is based off of, they were looking at expanding the road in about 5 years, which has been drawn up and is expected to be done. So adaptability in this situation was they wanted something that they could add to and extend when it was time to widen the road. We also have, let's see, another thing that we might look at here was total estimated cost, pretty straightforward. The environmental impact, that in this case, the description was the amount of detrimental impact to the surrounding environment and the effects upon the stream due to alternative implementation. We've talked, Cassie, about the detouring public, and particularly detouring emergency vehicles. So community traffic disruption, the amount of disruption to traffic flow, business operations, and daily life of the community. In this case, that was ranked with a 4. In some cases, some places it might be higher. So I think we can go on down a little bit. Let's go to the bottom of this to step 2. So in step 2, these, you simply put in the products that you want to plug into this analysis. So if you wanted to change one, Cassie, what was the product that you were thinking about adding?
I am going, so once we go through this whole thing, I figured we'd go through and do a couple of examples with different products that we've shown on RelineLIVE, and just kind of play around with all the different rankings and show how it spits out different product recommendations.
Okay, gotcha. So, this is just as simple as plugging in the product that you want to plug in. And then we can go to the next tab. So there's three tabs. So this is the worksheet, and this is where the person using the tool has to plug in the figures. So in the far left-hand column are those methods that came from step 2. So in the directions for this tab, we have edit each cell with the data from your analysis for each rehabilitation method. Do not edit the total project cost column. This is automatically calculated. Use the drop downs where provided to select from a preset list of options. So here's where the person, the decision maker, needs to contact people with each company and possibly some contractors to come up with some answers, because we have construction time, design life, flow capacity, these things that we looked at in the first step, or going across the top of the page here. So in this case, they're plugged in. Let's go, Cassie, to the column. So we've got construction time, design life, flow capacity. Those are all things that can be determined and calculated. So when we get to increased structural integrity, you can click on that tab, and you have it. So the value here that we're plugging in, if it's extreme, it gets a 5. If it's low, it would get a 2. And this is, done through the rest of the columns across the page until you get to the estimated cost.
So
when it comes to environmental impact,
Cullom is what we talked about yesterday when we went through this, is that low might be a 4 under environmental impact, but because that's a good thing, but under structural integrity, low means it's not as structural, so it has a lower ranking, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
And this, of course, all works into the numbers of the spreadsheet as we're going forward. So you just have to kind of get on it and play with it a little bit. The user needs to kind of tinker around with the drop downs for each of those. And then, of course, on the far right, the user would plug in the cost associated with it. Contractor availability is one that I thought was kind of interesting on this originally, because I prior to seeing the analysis that I saw this used on, I hadn't really thought about that too much, but it's it's interesting to kind of go through all these steps and evaluate things. So we can go to the next.
Some of that has to do with, in my mind, when I look at that, I think there's certain products that you have a lot of contractors that know how to install, and then you have very niche products that have to be certified, and there's going to be 1 or 2, and so the availability might be much less on those kind of products, right?
Right, like a spray-on polyurethane or something,
Yeah. Yeah, we run into that with cementitious spray liners, where there's a limited amount of certified contractors that can do that, and depending on the area you're in.
Right.
So then let's go to the evaluation summary at this point, and then show everybody how that's calculated.
Okay.
I see some questions coming in, and we'll get to those as soon as we're done with this tab.
So this page gives you your results. So this page isn't to be edited. If you wanted to edit something, you'd go back to one of the previous pages, because you can still do that. You could still go back and change values if you wanted to. So the first columns are showing, here we're getting into the rank. The score will be between 1 and however many options are being considered. 2 or more rehabilitation methods may have the same score in these columns if they were if similar data was entered for them. And you can also see across the top of the page, like under estimated flow capacity, there's a 10. That's from our first page where we said that was most important. So sticking with estimated flow capacity as our example, there's the weighted value of 10. So if you look right below that on the Infrasteel line, if Infrasteel got a score of 9 on estimated flow capacity, 10 times 9 is 90. And that's the way it is, across each of these pages. So that adds in the weighted value. This is how it's sort of calculated.
And let's explain that real quick, because that is going to, I see already a flow question in here. That's going to be a little confusing. So I want to go back and show you guys what Cullom is talking about. So as an engineer or a designer on the evaluate your options, this flow capacity line is so important because that's where you're going to calculate the various diameters you're looking at versus the product you're looking at. If it's ovaled, if you take a squash pipe or an arch pipe and you widen that flow capacity, that's up to the engineer to figure out. So once you put that in here, then it ranks it. So you notice when you go back to the evaluation summary, there is a score of 9 for Infrasteel and a score of 9 for arch smooth wall steel. That's because they have the exact same flow capacity. So it ranks it based on the lowest flow gets a 1 and the highest flow gets a 10. But if they're tied, then they both got a 9. Okay, right. So you won't see a 10 in here because they tied with the exact same flow capacity. I just wanted to point that out, that that's the work on the back end that has to be done. The sheet doesn't do that for you.
Right. So that second tab is just where all the input needs to be plugged in from, for the summary to get to this summary. And the total score, like yesterday, Cassie, you were plugging in some different values. We changed, the outcome to the right is the total score. The products with the highest scores, are the best fit. And the user can change those things, working from the first sheet going forward. So it is unbiased. We don't think that our product's the best is the best for every culvert rehab situation, and we're kind of like are backing that up with this tool for analysis for those that are interested in using
it. In this example, which we are going to now move into some actual product examples of different products that we've shown on RelineLIVE or that we know about in the industry. But as you can see on this perfect example, it's smooth wall polyethylene has the highest total score, not much higher than Infrasteel, but they do have the highest total score on here on this example.
It wasn't the original value set that was used that, Infrasteel had the highest number at 284, but I think yesterday we were messing around polyethylene a little bit.
Yeah.
It depends on, yes, it just kind of depends on, yeah.
And I'm going to go around and do some more messing and show how we can change. We can limit it to fewer products. We can do a lot of products and mess around with numbers and show people that it's going to affect that total score ranking.
Right.
We have a couple of questions I thought we'd get to before I do my examples. One question was that they don't see the pipe diameter. How are the Manning's equation established for each application? Cullom, correct me if I'm wrong, that goes back to that flow, right? That's up to the engineer to figure out the diameter and the flow of that diameter of liner pipe. We don't get into that granular in this, right?
Right. So that would be on the second sheet to do the when you're plugging in your input. You would the user would know that information. He would have gotten the Manning's coefficient for each product and the diameters that were available, to best suit that location, and would look at the cross-sectional area, figure out the flow rates for each product. Whereas, an arch in an arch shape is going to have typically better flow capacity than putting in something around in an arch shape. And it's just something that takes a little time to get on there and play around with and get comfortable with.
You there, Cullom?
Yes.
Okay. I think it was my internet connection. I was kind of breaking up there. So
I
I
thought you were trying to
I
questions.
think that answers that question. I'm going to move on. Let's see. Increased structural integrity, low to extreme. Extreme means the importance of structural capability. Sorry, I really got to look in here. For instance, placement under a freeway versus low, perhaps under a parking lot, question mark. Are there definitions, examples of these terms on the spreadsheet?
Well, I think if you went to, go back to the first page, when we put a value on structural integrity and from 1 to 10,
Okay.
and if it was a parking lot, maybe that would be a lesser value than in this situation. When it was ranked, we had increased structural integrity was an 8. You know, if that's not as important, that's where that would factor in. So you could put a lower value on that if you wanted to, or I think that's what the question's about.
Yeah, I think to expand on that answer, just in my experience, I think it's also referring to the product's structural integrity. There are some products out there. We represent one that's Hydrotite. It is a joint seal product for primarily RCP, but can be used in metal applications. It's not structural. It's not sold to be structural. You're not adding any sort of strength back to that pipe. So that's where you want to look at, if you're looking at, let's say, a CIPP liner, see if what structural value it actually adds back under the roadway or parking lot versus maybe a fully grouted HDPE or steel pipe. So look at the structural comparisons, and that is totally defined typically by an engineer, but also the product will.
Yes, and
Right.
then you would go back to the second tab and plug that in using the drop downs for each one. I think, yeah, once you got that information. So, and looking at sheet number 2, we have that increased structural integrity for each one. So you would, put the value of that product, of its structural integrity there. And so, it's a weighted matrix, and it's sort of designed to take some of the guesswork out of things. It's an evaluation tool. There's some examples available where maybe somebody might be looking at several different car options, when they're trying to buy a new car. You can use this for different decisions. And yeah, so you just get on there and you kind of play around with it till you're comfortable with it. But you do have to do that work on and find out about each product so you can plug in those rankings and values on the second sheet. Are you looking at questions? Can you hear me, Cassie? Oh, can't hear you.
Okay, I'm back. I lost my audio for a second. Okay, here is another question, and this one I definitely will need to work with you on. What are the permit implications related to DEP before applying the lining system? Not sure that's more of a per product, right?
Yeah, that would be something that would, we have permitting on here as as something to be considered. But as far as that process for a particular site, so we just have permitting difficulty, which in this example had a ranking of a 2. No, yes. So that didn't seem to be real important for the owner or the user that was doing the original work here, and I, obviously that's different for different sites, different,
Yeah. So I think
different.
if I had to answer this question, the way I'm understanding it is, if you have heavy permitting based on DEP, then that is going to be higher in your ranking for importance, because you're going to have all these DEP regulations on permits. So that's important to the product that you choose, right?
Correct.
And then, so you put that in the ranking, that's highly important. Then you go look at the product and find out how difficult it is for that particular product for permitting on specific jobs. An example is here in the Northwest, especially Oregon and Washington, we have a lot of water. It's a much more liberal area. So Fish and Game wants fish passages. There's a lot of stuff we have to take into consideration, especially certain products in dry fire areas in the eastern side of Washington. We can use certain products and not others. So, and that's determined by the Forest Service. So those are the permitting things that I think were intended for here.
I see.
Yeah. As the lining will impact on upstream and down, as the lining will impact on upstream and downstream of the stream. Yeah, that's something, again, the engineer has to look at. The liner that's chosen, that will probably be environmental impact, if I'm understanding your question. They're asking how the liner would impact. Yeah, I think that would fall into the environmental impact.
Yes.
What was the project scope for this particular example or exercise? I.e., like example, was it 1,500 feet of 48-inch or equivalent?
Oh, they were 3 big arched failing CMPs. The state of North Carolina was doing big box culvert inspection on some nearby sites and saw that these were failing. And it's, like, I think there were 20,000 vehicles a day going over this, and they were big arches. Some of them had gotten pretty deformed in shape, and the contractor was able to slide in our liner and actually pull it down past some of those kicked in places and push forward, and the liner sprung back out, and it reshaped the ID of the existing culverts. And so they were 2 lanes of road. I think they were 80 feet each. Not looking at the case study, but this case study is on the website, infrasteel.com.
And we are 1 minute to 11:30. I know you have, well, my time, 12:30 your time. I know you have a flight to catch. I do want to go through and do one quick example just to show people how it changes the spit out. Do you have a second for that, Cullom?
Go for it.
All right, let's do it. I'm going to go back up here. So flow capacity in our mind is probably the #1 thing engineers ask us when they're looking at Reline, is the hydraulics. But there is a structural component. So in this particular case, I'm going to say that's a 10. I'm going to say this is a 9. I'm going to say that the total cost, this is very important to this county, let's say, that's doing this project. So we're going to make that an 8. They don't want any traffic disruptions. We're going to make that a 7. They're very cost conscious, so they're not worried about the construction time. If they can save money, that'll be a 2. They can issue permits, so we'll make that the least important. We'll go contractor availability, kind of construction time. We'll say that that's a 3. I need to have adaptability of not hugely important, 4, because they're never going to expand this small road. 5 for environmental impact. And then I'm missing a 6. I must have 4, 5. Oh, 7. Oh, I need one of these will be a 6. So we'll say design life is a 6. So you guys, again, I'm just throwing this out there so that we can see some different options. So rehabilitation options. Let's say that this is an arched pipe. and there are some arch products. So Infrasteel we'll leave that one in there because that's a custom design product, right? Let's say they want to look at Duramax. Let's say it's a large arch, but they want to look at Duramax for slip lining, which not highly ovalable, but it can be considered. Let's just say that it's not a huge arch, right? Let's say we want to look at Snap Tight as a product line. Let's say we also want to look at a cementitious spray liner because it can go in ovaled really well. Let's see, what else would we want to look at? Let's look at channel line can be customized. And we'll do aluminum plate pipe arch. That's perfect. So we'll leave those in here. And then I can just delete these, right, Cullom?
Yes.
Okay.
You know, there's some places to add additional at the bottom if somebody wants to consider more options.
Yeah. This, for our example, I think this is good because it gives us, right? So I can clear this all out because we're not considering those. And then we'll go up here and we're going to stay construction time. Yeah, I'll just leave these. So cementitious liner, let's say that that's 10 weeks because of availability of a contractor, because that's one where we only have to be certified. It's harder to get someone. Let's see, channel line, maybe because of the ordering process, that's 7 weeks. Aluminum plate pipe, that's available anytime, so maybe that's only 2 weeks. And then I'm just going to throw some numbers in here so people can just kind of see, right? Okay. This is a guaranteed 50. If you guys are 75, I don't even know what cementitious liner is. So, and then we'll just
we can have 100. I was going to say we can add design life to our product by adding steel to the thickness. So it's not always 75. We can make it 100.
Oh, and that's a cementitious. They can go 1 inch, 1.5, 2 inch. I just don't know enough about it to know how that affects the design.
Yeah, I don't know about. I mean, just the Infrasteel is all I was saying. Go ahead.
No, yeah, and that's where the engineer has to look at all of this stuff, you guys, so that we know, right, what we're considering. So let's say you didn't oval this one, and it would go to like 345, but you ovaled Snap Tight. Maybe that would be I don't know, 425. Cementitious liner, let's say that would be 378. I'm throwing in numbers here. 388. I don't know, that'll be corrugated, so that would probably be.
And hit some of those, Cassie. Why don't you hit some of those where you get the drop downs?
Yeah.
And change some of those, show how it's done, then you can maybe skip across to the totals on the last page. Or you can play around with it some if you got interest. I'm going to have to leave. First time I've flown in 3 months. We'll see how it goes. But thank you for having me. And if anybody has any questions, they can always call me.
Okay.
All right.
Safe travel.
Thanks so much.
I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thank you.
So community disruption, this one is low. Community disruption, this one is going to be low as well. And some of these can be the same. It really depends on the product that you guys are looking at. Contractor availability, like I said, with cementitious, it might be, it's going to be low because there's only so many certified around. So with Duramax, it's probably low or high because they do have that's permitting. I was looking at contract availability. It's a slip lining product, so you can do that and then change structural integrity. I mean, these are just, once you know what product you're looking at, this is where you guys can really play around with it. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. But let's say the spray liner product was, let's say max was 525. And let's say this one would be even less. Let's say that one would be 3. Construction contingency, I'm just going to leave as is. Design fee, let's say this design is less, oops. Let's say this design is more. Let's see, this design is like, okay. Now we're gonna look at total project cost. So it automatically calculates this. And then let's go into our evaluation summary. So, well, that's on me. So it looks like you've got snap tie and Infrasteel in the top. But let's say you go over to your evaluation options and you say Infrasteel in this particular case has for whatever reason, extreme environmental impact. And maybe it's off the roadway and it comes in larger lengths, or the flow capacity is less. So we can put it at 345. Now all of a sudden you've got snap tight and channel line or higher options in this scenario. We go to, and then you can go back and look and see, okay, structural plate pipe arch, why is that one coming in low? Well, it could be its design life. It could be that we didn't rank it, the importance of certain things. Construction time is low. Environmental impact being extreme might be affecting it. Permitting difficulty being extreme is probably affecting it. So depending on how you change things, but also just the total ranking. So does anybody else have questions? I would love for you guys to play around with this. Let us know what you think. Looks like I still have a lot of people on the call, so you guys must be kind of intrigued. You can download this from Infrasteel's website. We will also be putting a link to download it on tvpipesolutions.com. Next week, while I have everybody on, we're actually going to be talking about Context and UltraFlow product as a Reline option. So I think that that's going to be a really fun RelineLIVE next Thursday. We have Ryan joining us from Context. So if you guys have any more questions, I'm going to stay on maybe another minute and do what I can to answer without Cullom here. But thank you guys so much for joining us. These are just getting more and more popular, so I really appreciate everyone's time. Okay, I don't see any questions coming in, so I'm going to sign out. You guys have a wonderful afternoon. Enjoy the rest of the week. Hopefully your weather's as nice as it is here in Boise. I will see you guys next week. Thanks again.